The most important lesson I've learned about government bureaucracy is that they exist to maximize their budgets. So if you're going to have a government bureaucracy, the important thing to do is design it so that as it maximizes its budget, it also does what you want it to do. To me, that means for public lands that they should be allowed to charge fees for all kinds of uses, and that they should be able to keep the same share of those fees so they have an incentive to balance the land use according to the value users place on that land. Now, there's some resources that are valuable even though there's no way to collect a fee for it, like an endangered species. So what I propose is to turn federal lands into trusts. The beneficiary of those trusts would be those non-market resources. In other words, a non-profit organization that would manage the revenues from the trust in order to maximize the value of the non-market resources on that trust. The trust also creates several more checks and balances to make sure that the lands are properly managed, including having a board of trustees that will oversee it, the compulsion to be transparent to the public, and a requirement that they manage the resources on a sustainable basis. All these things are built into trust law. So I like the idea of a trust better than the current federal system, which does not provide those checks and balances. How are we going to get there? I think it's going to depend on taking our opportunities when we see them. The federal government is right now in such dire financial straits, so we're starting to see proposals to sell federal lands and use some of that money to, for example, make the Social Security Trust Fund whole. Environmentalists are going to hate that idea, but they might be willing to accept trusts that keep the federal estate intact but manage it differently in response to both market and non-market forces and protect those lands. Historically, environmentalists have opposed any privatization except for what's necessary to allow the expansion of urban areas such as Las Vegas, which is in a state that's 89% federally owned and which has no private land available for development. It's all the growth in that area is from the sale of public lands. Otherwise, they've been against it. And even though some environmental groups, such as the Audubon Society, manage their own lands, and even though they manage them primarily for wildlife, they do oil and gas drilling on those lands and manage them for other resources as well, they oppose that kind of thing for federal lands. That could change, and I'm not saying it won't change, but right now I see a trust idea as a better idea because I want to see an end to subsidies. I think most of the environmental destruction on federal lands is subsidized. And the interesting thing is just privatizing it doesn't guarantee an end to subsidies. Private agricultural lands in this country actually get far more subsidies per acre than federal lands do. So just privatizing them doesn't safeguard that.